Hello, Galaxy. I'm Chris Pirillo, and no, I am not laughing at the iPhone 8 Plus outright. I'm laughing at myself because now that we are basically live streaming every day or every weekday in the Locker Gnome YouTube channel, youtube.com/LockerGnome. Set up notifications for that. A few minutes ago, if not a minute ago, you received a notification saying I was live in the other YouTube channel that I set up specifically to do TLDR, the Locker Gnome Daily Report, live for you every weekday. I started streaming this video into that channel. Oops, my bad. In fact, I wasn't even planning on doing the live iPhone 8 Plus 1 week review now. I was planning on doing it later, but unfortunately I must have hit the schedule button, so I'm doing it now. You're watching me now. So yeah, if you're not aware, we've got a couple of YouTube channels, actually more than a few. But as far as tech goes, it's this one, Chris Pirillo, and the other one where we plan on doing more live videos. I really didn't want to do a live video as much in this channel, but knowing that I've been doing a lot of my iPhone talk here, I thought it would be suitable, or it would be fitting, versus using the other channel more for an AMA. That said, we do have a few Super Chat messages which have already trickled in, as well as those who have supported us elsewhere, either on the Patreon campaign, chrispirillo.com is where you can find that, or people who sub to me on Twitch can also get access to our Discord chat. Head over to twitch.tv/chrispirillo. Even though I'm not doing a lot of live video on Twitch right now, I might with IRL. But if you sub to me on Twitch, you get access to the 24/7 Discord chat room. And it's even better. If you have Amazon Prime connected to your Twitch account, you may even be able to sub to me for free and then get access for free to the Discord chat room. That's been set up for your enjoyment. So thank you for tuning into this live broadcast. We do have a few people. I've already scored a couple of dislikes for the video, but I'm happy to say way more likes for something that I haven't even done yet. I hope to be able to turn to the chat throughout the broadcast to basically answer your questions. So now that I've set the rules, let me go ahead and say I may have exchanged this phone yesterday. It's still kind of getting back to where it needs to be. All the apps running the way that I expect them to run. But this is my feeling. Like, if you were to tap me right now and ask, Chris, what do you feel 1 week in to using the iPhone 8 Plus for a week? How do you feel, apart from saying 1 week in and then a week after I said that? It's fun to do live video. It feels a lot like the iPhone 7 Plus. I'm just going to be honest. Yeah, it looks like exactly the same. But it feels the same. And I don't just mean by weight. I mean, in terms of software, there are definitely differences with iOS 10, or whichever minor revision you choose to be using. But for the most part, it just doesn't feel like a new iPhone. I understand there have been incremental improvements. You saw me demonstrate the differences, dramatic differences, between the iPhone 7 Plus cameras and the iPhone 8 Plus cameras. And no doubt about it, hands down, the iPhone 8 Plus cameras are a big bucket of wind. That's one of the reasons I would not abandon it, if only because as I intend on looking at a few more Android flagship devices in the coming weeks, months, days, possibly, I need to have an iPhone on hand, if only because I know people are going to ask, well, how does it compare to the iPhone 8 Plus? If I don't have one, I can't test it. So I'm inclined to say I already feel like it's old hat. Not to suggest that you would, wear an iPhone on head. iPhone on head is the new shoe on head. I don't know if you knew that. As of right now, I made it a thing. I think that's not exactly damning to Apple, but it's also not encouraging. And I understand there's a dramatic departure between what we saw with the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 7 Plus and the iPhone 10. But in terms of an upgrade, I don't know if the whole is greater than the sum of its parts as far as the 8 Plus is concerned. iOS 11 is still... You've heard me talk about that. I do not want to beat that dead horse. But it doesn't feel like it's a newer phone. Forget what it looks like. It just doesn't feel like it's a newer phone. Already a week in and I'm acclimated to it. Man, I'm not sure if I've really felt that way with a lot of devices in an upgrade cycle. You'd expect to have this feeling like, for the past year you've been using a device, or at least I had with the iPhone 7 Plus. In going to a new device, you would expect potentially a better experience. I can say, empirically, it is a better experience, but I would also go as far as to qualify that by saying it is a marginally, like just very barely, hardly, if I use that word correctly, it's hardly a better experience. And I'm not sure if the cost is justified if you moved from, or intend on moving from a previous gen device to the new device. Now, if you're a few device generations removed, yeah, it's probably a solid upgrade. But I think that if I had to encapsulate what I feel in terms of this iPhone now, no different, really. And I feel this way with Apple cycles, with software development cycles. I kind of have to wait for a couple of software revisions before it may kind of be better-ish. But one week in, yeah, software is still a catastrophe and a half. That's for sure. I don't know if that's going to get better. I hope it's going to get better. They say it's going to get better, but they always say it's going to get better, and it never gets better. And I'll certainly walk through, different aspects of the usability of how I was using the device and what I noticed was different throughout the duration of this week as we keep going. I do have to give a shout out to King Flippin' Ryan for a super chat. You go to YouTube, you press the little, I guess it's a $sign button. Make no mistake. And he says, let's start this rant off right. So thank you for starting the super chat there, King Flippin' Ryan. And Corey Spencer also did a super chat. Shout out to you. Da Groschen? It's that weird B looking German symbol in the alphabet. I think it's a sh. I barely remember the German that I picked up briefly, but he says, hello, Chris. I remember you from Tech TV. Wow, indeed. So yeah, wow. It's nice to interact with people. I gotta tell you, this is way better than television. Way better than TV ever was, that's for sure. So, just looking at the chat, it's gonna be difficult to keep up because we do have a stream of comments coming in. But, it's a good question that I see. Chris, do you regret buying the iPhone 8 Plus? I don't know if I regret it, but I'm also not... I don't have buyer's remorse, but I'm also not looking to justify my purchase either. I'm not bowled over by it. I'm not amazed by it. I'm not like, wow, this is the best upgrade ever. Wow, it's so much better. There have been small improvements, but I don't regret it. I would have wished for more. I would have wanted for more. I would have wanted for a better software experience. And that speaks largely to the hardware, not so much to the hardware. So in terms of my experience with the phone has been less about being perturbed by the lack of changes in design and more perturbed by the lack of changes with software. It's kind of different, or a different way of looking at things. David Stevens does a super chat and says, have you noticed how bad 3D touch lag is on the home screen? So bad. Dude, it's been horrible for years. You might remember it was, I want to say it was the iPhone 6S Plus. If that was a thing, right? They didn't have the 7S Plus, but they had the 6S Plus. I tried it. I couldn't stand it because the dropped frames in the animation on specifically the 3D touch thing that they were trying to promote. That was just driving me crazy, and it's still prevalent. But it's not a hardware problem. It's a software problem. Who cares about the hardware if the software doesn't work well? That's my point. That's why specs are irrelevant. They don't tell you that 3D touch works better because they can't. It doesn't. So yes, I have noticed, and it's one of the reasons why I just don't use 3D touch all that often. The only time I use 3D touch, if you didn't know that you could do this, the only time I use it is on the keyboard. So if you want to reposition the cursor, you just 3D touch the keyboard and then move your finger around. Did you know you could do that? You probably did, because you probably know way more than I do. But that's the only time I use it. I don't want to use 3D touch on, shortcuts on the home screen just because the animation's so bad. I don't want to use 3D touch in apps because, honestly, I just don't see why. I use 3D touch sometimes in Notification Center. Sometimes. But it's still a mess on the iPhone 8. The iPhone 8 Plus, I should say, in terms of design and usability. So 3D touch is a great idea, a horrible implementation. But then again, that's kind of become the Apple's song. It's its theme song. Its fight song, if you will. Joshua Topolsky from The Outline actually posted this really nice article, a send-up on Apple, effectively in the same spirit, suggesting Apple just doesn't know design. They don't know how to do design anymore. I completely agree. Completely agree. So, in terms of walking through the actual features and what I've experienced this past week, the speakers, the loudspeakers, if they call them louder, allegedly they're 25% louder. I guess I could hear the difference, but I don't know if that's psychosomatic. I don't know if it's, oh yeah, I definitely hear, oh, that's definitely louder. I don't know if I'm feeling it. Maybe I just don't ever listen to anything super loud, apart from someone that I'm speaking with on speakerphone. I did not experience this crackling issue, which allegedly is going to get fixed in a future software revision. The only issue I had with audio in the speakers was an in-app notification sound. It was topping out. That was crackling. I've only heard it once though, that I know of. Maybe a few times. Kind of lost track. I turn off sounds. I don't generally have them on. But it could be related to software. It could be related to hardware. It's difficult to say at this point. As I did mention, though, this is just my second day with this phone. Really, the first full day with the iPhone 8 Plus. This one, the first one got returned. That's what I was doing the video on last night, which seems to have been received well. Yeah, I know the title kind of threw people off, but that was the point, right? I wanted to talk about the story, but it's true. I returned my iPhone 8 Plus and exchanged it for another one. But it had a factory defect. Here's another thing, even though it's not in relation to my review, apparently there are reports suggesting that some iPhone 8s or 8 Pluses are coming unglued with the battery expanding. It's going to happen. I don't think that's a systemic problem. But it does speak to an issue. It's funny how the press goes wild. Oh, it's a battery problem. Ah! I understand you could die, but they just make a big noise around these battery issues. But when I showcased my factory underpour of the oleophobic coating, you heard crickets. I'm like, really? Like it's right here. Well, I can't show you because I exchanged that one, returned it. So it's interesting to see some of these reports coming in. I don't think that's going to be a problem that most of us are going to have to deal with, though. So I wouldn't worry about returning your iPhone 8s outright. In terms of screen quality, it was a wash. It was the same. The True Tone display is more dramatic in terms of difference when you look at phones side by side. So that is something that you've got to keep in mind. Like it's nice to have. I don't think it's anything apart from a check mark in terms of, oh yeah, it's okay, I can do this now. Even when they're dramatically side by side, the thing is, I guess I never had a problem with it. 1. 2, I'm actually getting a new prescription that's going to be arriving in another week or so expect some new specs. You heard it, specs matter when they're on your face. The new frames that I have, they're black, but they're slightly more round, not huge, not like bug eyes, but shorter and a bit taller, but also very, very black. So I'm getting a new prescription. And in the prescription, they have this new, coating, which will minimize the blue light that is emitted from technology. So, in essence, you could upgrade your glasses without upgrading your screen. Yeah? In terms of the battery, I haven't necessarily felt like it's been any worse than the iPhone 7. And I tell you, the iPhone 7 Plus is diminished in battery capacity almost overnight with iOS 11. It's bad. iPhone 8, it's doing okay. But just knowing that I've been doing a lot of heavy use over the past week, it's very difficult to ascertain whether or not it's going to be an issue over time. That said, inductive charging was the big selling point for the iPhone 8. I've been using it, but I've been using it for the past year with Mophie's solution. This is really how I choose to charge things, or at least the devices that have the Mophie case, the sled with the battery packs that magnetize onto the back of it. So the inductive charging has been nice, but as I pointed out, you can have that feature right now on your current device. So even in using it for the past week, that hasn't been that much different. There really hasn't been that much different. I'm struggling to think of the just this huge change, and maybe Apple did that on purpose to try to get you to upgrade to the 10. I ain't touching the 10. I can see from a distance the design nightmares. We've seen some great tweets come out too, like people showing the way Apple could have done it, like actual designers suggesting this is the way it could be done. You got to follow my tweet stream, follow my mentions. I can't even tweet everybody or retweet everybody. But it's been great to see that many people who are seeing just as many problems. Jeff Runner did a super chat. Do we need to have more concern now about Apple's iPhone security as well as their lack of quality control of the software? I would not say so, but I've long said that. I think that you have to be concerned about that no matter whose product you're choosing to use. And that is something that you have to recognize when you're using technology. It's not that any one is better in that department or necessarily worse. It's just going to be different. And I think part of that difference could be frustrating when you've only known that one product and you thought you had this you had this feeling of feeling safe, but that's a false sense of security. It's like it's like this false sense of not even understanding, just this belief that Apple could design things and they can't. Not anymore. I mean, they're you want to talk about coasting on their laurels. I think the iPhone 8 is definitely more of an iPhone 7s. And I think they produced it to give a fallback because they knew that not everybody was going to upgrade to the 10, but they wanted to give them something new apart from driving them off platform. But I'm sitting here telling you, the iPhone 8 just does not feel all that new. To me, to you, completely different story. Completely different story. Another super chat came in from David Stevens. Is it frustrating that hardly any other tech YouTuber calls out Apple out on their lack of polish? Drives me wild. It's like they're scared to do so. So I have my feelings about this. I'm not going to accuse anybody of something that I can't prove. And I can't prove that they're trying to do it. I can only see the smoke. And where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And that is possibly the most concerning thing. I feel that they don't pay attention to the software because they don't pay attention to software. That's what it boils down to. I don't think it's intentional. It's just, okay, this is going to sound odd, but it really comes out of ignorance. And I'm not saying they're ignorant people. They're generally really smart. These people are geniuses, many of them. Like they do what they do and they love what they do and they get what they do. And they look at it, specifically from the angle of this is what it looks like and these are the components inside, and then they're done. Oh yeah, I see. Here's some new features that you can do. They're use or whatever. And then they're done. And then that's not it, right? That's just the beginning. Like the iPhone is just part hardware. It's mostly software, but it's just part hardware. So it frustrates me, but not because I believe that they know what they're doing. Because honestly, if I felt like I knew what they were doing, then I would really be angry. I'm like, why are you doing your viewers a disservice? Which I believe they are, but not intentionally. They're doing it unintentionally. They're not keeping it off the board, with intention. That said, some reviewers ignore these problems and they do it with intention because they want to stay in Apple's good graces. And I think that's just as dangerous, right? I got no horse in this race. I don't care. I guess people have compared me to Flossie Carter. I'm like, I'm not in his league. Like I'm way, like he's up there and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But I would trust his perspective more than I might trust someone who might go to an event over and over and over again or cover it for a media outlet over and over and over again. They're just going to have a different perspective. I guess I feel that some people are afraid of telling the truth about software. I'm not. Obviously, I'm not. So not afraid of telling the truth, which is part of my problem. That's why a lot of people don't like me. Because inevitably, if I haven't upset you about something I've said, give me time. I will inevitably upset you about something. I'll say something wrong, or I'll say something this way, or say something that way. I reserve the right to change my mind. Whatever it happens to be, I will upset you. But I still feel like I'm going to give you a straight shot. I'll be honest, I got my integrity. When something's sponsored, I'll say it's sponsored. I'll say if I got a partner, I got a partner. If I got a review unit, I got a review unit. If I'm doing something for somebody else, I'm doing something for somebody else. So it's just it's frustrating. To answer the question, it's frustrating that people don't pay attention to me for these finer points, these smaller details. These are good questions, everybody. I mean, whether you're asking with the super chat or just in regular old live chat, we've got quite an audience here. So this is a common question. Have you tried the Galaxy Note 8? I have not. The hope is I will. I don't know when. I don't know how. I would like to, if only to look at it from the software perspective, because I just don't feel that anybody else has outright. I know Samsung's TouchWiz has come a long way. I just don't know how far it's come, and I can see it at a distance. I'm like, it looks nice, but how well does it work? You know, does the software sing in harmony with the hardware? And if it doesn't, if there's some amount of, well, to use the word, discord between the two, if it's a cacophony, then it's a bad device. And that's where I feel Apple's iPhones currently sit. They're just not great devices. They are devices. I will say that. They do work. But a week in with the iPhone 8 Plus, I don't feel it necessarily works any better than the iPhone 7 Plus. Or for that matter, maybe even the iPhone 6 Plus or the 6S. So, Excalibur says, darn it. Actually, he said the other D word. I gotta be careful. He says, I keep telling you we can donate the money for you to get and review it. How are we gonna do that? How am I can't set up a different campaign for each new device. Can I? Is that a thing? Has someone created a service to do just that? Maybe I should do that. I guess I'll look into it. It's not a bad idea. I'd so much rather do that. I'd so much rather go to the community for this. Because it's just easier. I can count on you. I can count on the community. I always can. I know I can. And that's why I like doing these kinds of live videos. And again, doing live video every weekday, TLDR, in the Locker Room YouTube channel, the other one. Even though today's was really bad, I had to kind of push down the bitrate settings for this live stream because we had some bandwidth issues earlier. But I still saved a pretty decent chunk of that particular broadcast, and you can watch that after this. So it's apparently being reported that we are currently lag-free, which is great, unless you're talking about phones being lag-free. I thought you were talking about the live video stream. That would be nice. So in terms of let's see here, what else? In terms of regular usability, interactivity, I've talked to iOS in I guess in a general sense. There's still a great amount of jank. Less jank, slightly less jank than what I've experienced in the iPhone 7. What are other things you may want to know that I haven't covered yet? Performance in general, I can't say that apps necessarily launch any quicker, and even new and updated apps runs just as poorly. This is what I'm going to be interested in doing. Like, when I say when I get my Pixel, I want a Pixel so badly. I would settle for the first Pixel at this point. When I get my Pixel, I cannot wait to try the same apps on that platform as on iOS to do some true software comparisons. But even updated apps on iOS just have horrible animation frame rates. So the software experience has been bad. What else might you want to know about the iPhone 8 in a weekend? Raymond Behringer asks, little details have special talents in creating big problems. Yes, they do. With software, as far as Apple is concerned, it's always one more thing. As I've said before, it's death by 1,000 cuts. And it's an amalgamation of all of these just niggling issues that, just get under your skin. And I mean, it's maddening. Maddening. I mentioned it yesterday, but I wanted to chuck the iPhone 7 Plus across the parking lot yesterday, just using it for a brief time because it had more jank than the 8 Plus. And it's like you kind of get accustomed to it. You become acclimated to the frame rate issues and the animation slop and the layout headaches and the nightmares in software, and you just get used to it. And I guess to me, I'm tired of being used to it. I'm tired of being used to iOS. It's not that it's boring. It's not that it's routine. It's not that I'm used to it. I'm just tired of the problems, I guess. Maybe instead of just being used to the problems. I'm tired of facing these issues that we just should not have seen. Uplifter Man did a super chat. Thank you. iPhone 8 Plus cost nearly iPhone 10 in Norway, $1,600 US. Whoa! For the iPhone 8 Plus? Holy cow! So it costs nearly as much in Norway. Wow, that is, oh jeez. I kind of talked about this. Is the iPhone too expensive in that video? There's no way I could justify this at $1,600 in the U.S. I can't even justify this kind of experience on an iPhone 10 for $1,000 US. Barely can justify the cost of this. I barely could that's a good point. Talking about cost, I guess that's one aspect of weekend. I don't think I could justify the cost of this iPhone 8 Plus outright. Honestly, this is a bitter pill to swallow at $1,000 in this configuration. Very bitter. I think at most it feels like it's worth like $600. I'd be happy to pay $600 for this, but this is not $1,000 experience, a US $1,000 experience. I can tell you that a week in, it doesn't feel that way. Now after a software revision or two, maybe you just get used to it, you get acclimated, but I don't know. It just, to me, it just seems it's difficult to justify. I'm not looking to justify my purchasing behavior at all. I'm just telling you how I feel. That's all I got is my feelings. David Stevens comes in again with a super chat. Whoever was in charge of landscape, can I try that again, David? Whoever was in charge of landscape mode development at Apple needs to be fired. I concur wholehearitely. I think landscape mode is an absolute mess. There's something that I've experienced on the iPhone 8 as well as the 7. I think it's largely tied into into iOS. Landscape mode is unusable in iOS. Not that I've had amazing experiences on other platforms necessarily, but do not buy an iPhone 8 Plus because you think you're going to get better landscape mode. Ain't going to happen. And that's because of third-party apps, first-party apps. It's a mess. An absolute mess. It's a tack-on. It's an add-on. It's a shim. It's a sham is what it is. It's a sham with shims. Oh God. Now, can you imagine using landscape mode on an iPhone 10? It's so bad on an iPhone 8 Plus. It's so bad on an iPhone 7 or a 6S. Oh gosh. It's just not, it's not fun. It is so much not fun. Layout issues, and you'll see tons of problems when you try to rotate back into your other orientation, portrait, landscape, and iOS turns into the girl with the pigtails, the little blonde girl. That's iOS with landscape mode. That's my here. What? Tune in live and watch Chris recreate your favorite animated GIF. Do my best. Another super chat. And by the way, I completely agree with a lot of the people who are chatting right now. It sucks that YouTube doesn't understand that I would like to keep those comments. I won't be able to keep the comments live. After they've been posted, we don't get to keep them. YouTube gets rid of them. It's sad. Tony Yoon comes in with a super chat. Question 497. Tony has asked me 497 questions, and I've answered every single one of them. He says, didn't you say that the iPhone 10 was at the Apple Store when you went for the exchange? If so, wouldn't it have been worth it to at least try it out? So, yes, is the answer to that question, but my mind was a little preoccupied in terms of solving my problem. I do believe I will make the journey to go in and actually get my hands on one. Right now, I guess I'm going to be looking for, and I don't think I'm going to find that SNES Classic. I think they're gone. But yeah, I think I want to make that a dedicated experience. Like, I will go in with the intent to interact, to use, to feel, to touch. But again, to me, it's all about the software. And I've seen more than I've seen the software. It's not the hardware that wows me. It rarely is. It's not the design of the hardware, like what it looks like. Apart from the obvious gigantic black nipple at the top of the iPhone 10. Turd bar. The turd bar is really more the software turd at the bottom of the screen. That's more of a turd, because it's kind of like a floating turd bar at the bottom. The black nipple at the top, that's a nipple, right? It just looks like the nipple silhouettes. See, if Apple wanted to get fancy, they'd call it the silhouettes. It enhances and accentuates the time and the incredibly squished icons In the ears that we don't want to call ears, they are the flanking support beams. So I do intend on going and trying it very soon, possibly even within the next week. Tyler comes in with a super chat. Tyler, 2022. I have an S7 right now. That would be a Samsung Galaxy 7, assumedly. Should I upgrade to an 8 Plus? Had the last 3GS. Oh, S7 or 7S. Wait a minute. No, you wouldn't have had the 7S. Oh, do you mean Galaxy S7? I need you to clarify, Tyler, if you can, and I'll try to watch for your comment as it comes in again. It's difficult for me to compare to Samsung products because I haven't had any for a number of years. I think the last Samsung product I had was a Note 4. So it is a Galaxy S7. Okay, thank you for clarifying, Tyler. Should you then upgrade to an 8 Plus? Last had a 3GS. Well, in my estimation, the experience you would have had on an iPhone 3GS is better than the experience I had on an iPhone 8 Plus. Should you upgrade to the 8 Plus? I don't have an S7 in front of me, so I can't, and I don't have the experience of an S7, so I can't say definitively. I think it would be a potential lateral move with software, not knowing the TouchWiz experience on the Galaxy S7 outright. Camera may be an upgrade. Certainly. I think the camera was certainly an upgrade for me. Minor upgrade, but certainly palpable in terms of what I'd noticed between the iPhone 7 Plus and the iPhone 8 Plus. Should you upgrade? Well, if you're a fluid individual in terms of the platforms that you use on mobile, and you like what Apple's got in the 8 Plus, my recommendation is anymore, go into a store and try it for yourself. Because if you don't see the problems, and you might not, like some of the things that I say, people just they write me off. Oh, you're seeing things. There's no layout problems. There's no animation problems. Oh, I know they exist. You may not see them. So there may be more of a pathway for you to go from what you've experienced with Samsung to Apple. It may be easier for you to do, by and large. It's going to work differently, but I think you kind of already understand that from a software perspective. If it's more about the hardware for you, yeah, it would be a compelling upgrade. Certainly, you're talking about jumping from one generation to the next. I think you kind of have to ask, I would have to, ask for a qualification. What is it that you see in the 8 Plus that you would want, that would pull you in? And I think, at that point, you would have a great option in comparing the cost of the 8 Plus and then potentially comparing that to the cost of the Note 8. Because if you're staying within the Samsung Galaxy, so to speak, and by the way, at the beginning of the video when I say hello Galaxy, it's a Star Wars hello Galaxy, because in a galaxy far, far away, but we're here together in this galaxy, dealing with products that have Galaxy in the title. The hope would be that you would be compelled to get the iPhone 8 Plus based upon what you perceive as a value in software plus the features that you would see in hardware. But at that point, I would also recommend that you take a look at the cost that you would incur in comparison to what you might be already comfortable with or familiar with within Samsung's range of products. It's difficult, though, for me to, and I would even say this for an iPhone 7 Plus user, it's difficult for me to recommend wholeheartedly that you would go out and get the iPhone 8 Plus. It's incremental. If you're an older iPhone user and you want to stay within the iOS ecosystem, it's the best iOS experience that you can get right now in a phone. That's not an accolade. I'm just saying it is because it's the latest. And I would say that it's probably still going to top out over the iPhone 10, and not just in terms of performance, but in terms of general experience. Speaking of that, Uplifter Man comes back with another super chat. Yet I chose 8 Plus due to iPhone 10's UI is a disaster. Yeah. So it's the problem, right? If you're so tied into Apple, and I'm slowly peeling myself away. It's not easy to do. It's not simple to do because it's not as easy as just one device or another. Kind of like going back to what Tyler was asking about. If it's just one device, it's easier to go from one to the next. If you don't care so much about software, it's easier to jump here and there and here and there. If you don't care so much about everything that beyond that device itself, it's easier to make moves. And they may be upgrades. Sometimes they're lateral moves. I chose the 8 Plus, like Uplifter Man, because it's been a cycle. It's been something that I kind of have, in the past, I think I've looked forward to more. But to go back to what I was saying earlier, man, I am so looking forward to Google's announcements this coming week, this next week. I will do a live stream. It will likely be in this YouTube channel, the Chris Pirillo YouTube channel. I'll still do a separate TLDR to do an AMA interaction with everybody in the Locker Gnome YouTube channel, but you can stay tuned for that. It's really it's become very difficult to get excited and stay excited because I just don't see the things that I want to see improving. They add a new hardware feature, but or they may take one away, and it just doesn't jazz me. Software features jazz me. Always. They always have. Always have. Always will. I'm not a tech YouTuber. Can I be a Star Wars YouTuber? I am. I got the Star Wars Radar channel. Can I be a Lego YouTuber? I have Lego videos too. Those have got like over 1 million views. Because I get lumped in with the people that care about the hardware, and I don't care about the hardware. And if I'm a gamer, I do game. I can't wait to play the Battlefront 2 game. But I like retro stuff. I'm excited. I wanted to get the SNES Classic, but then that's not going to happen. I like the NES Classic thanks to Millionaire 2K. Did someone say something? Am I hearing things? Swear to God, I heard Jedi say something. Another question here, and thank you for keeping this on the iPhone 8 week experience topic. I'm not going to try to derail you. Do you think you'll change your mind on the iPhone 10 just like you did with the first generation iPhone? Epic Lath, people have got this theory that I'm going to change my mind. Dude, I don't change my mind about software. I can pick it up and go, ooh, but let me remind you, let me regale you. I don't have a pipe. I have a Thrawn figure, so I'm going to smoke my Thrawn figure. Let me regale you with the tale of how I fell in love with the first iPhone 8 years ago. It was a night much like this. It was a fine evening, slightly misty. I wasn't talking about the moisture in my eyes. I sat in a car, an automobile in the passenger seat. Window was rolled up, and I sat there alone. Someone set their iPhone down, and I decided to touch it. But then, I unlocked the phone, and I saw magic as I fired up the weather app on the screen, and I swiped left. Now, I don't know what they use in this Tinder nowadays. I don't know if swiping left means you don't like someone or like someone. That's a little too newfangled for me. But it was that one single swipe that won me over. It was not the hardware. It was not my crappy Southern American accent. It was not my lack of pipe, nor tobacco. Don't smoke. Smoking kills. Stay in school. Don't do drugs. It was the software. It's always been the software. For years and years, and I mean decades and decades. For as long as I can remember, it's always been about the software. For years, I loved the Windows software. I stayed within the Windows... Forgot to exhale. I stayed within the Windows ecosystem because the software, she was amazing. You could get software and software after software. You could walk into a store and you could see software in boxes. They used to have boxes in software back in my day. And I loved the software. And Windows had the software. DOS had the software. The Mac didn't have software. Oh, it had a few softwares, but not too many. And then the tides, they had turned. And then pretty soon, all the software flooded onto the Mac. A lot of software on the Mac. A lot of software on what they used to call the iPhone OS before it was known as iOS. It was always the software. So I could pick up the iPhone 10 to answer your question, and it would not dissuade me. No, sirree. I'd still stick to my guns, but I don't, because they're not here. They have little foam pellets that shoot out, and they go pew, 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 pew. Pretty neat. It's never for nothing. I really got to remember to exhale when I inhale this stuff. Not good for my lungs. Nope. It's always been the software. And I can see everything I need to... I will stop now. I've seen enough with software. I'm good. I don't need to see any more with the software. I know the nightmares of iOS. I know how bad 11 has been on newer devices, on older devices. I know it might improve, but then you have to deal with the floating black nipple. Just imagine, like in the entire video. You know what I need? This is what I need to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to find something to set this on if I can. You will have to pardon me. Okay, I'm done with the southern accent, I swear. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this. For potentially the remainder of the video, it may actually annoy me. For the remainder of the video, I'm gonna leave this over here. This box. There you go. You can't get rid of it. You try to get rid of it, but you can't. It's just gonna sit there. Actually, I can do this better. Hang on. I'm gonna annoy you anyway. I'm gonna give you a full iPhone 10. Well, not exactly full iPhone 10 experience. I just want to occlude the view somewhat so that you can't see me. Look, how many fingers am I holding up? Okay, iPhone 10 users, how many fingers am I holding up? This will be a fun game to play. The answer, 5. The answer. How many fingers am I holding up now? The answer, 10. Get it? Because it's not exactly a perfect scenario. I'm going to take Vader. It's a great Vader. Jack Specific sent me this one. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay, back to answering questions now. That's what happens when you ask me if I'm going to change my mind on the 10. You now have your definitive video. I thought it was a decent try, and not bad for live. David Stevens asks in his super chat, can I assume since you're using a battery pack that you're not thrilled with the battery life? P.S. Slowly funding your Pixel 2 purchase. Lol. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I should look into a way to crowdfund devices. I'm going to ask a couple of friends on how I could do that. Because that would be a great way of doing it. I'd so much rather do that. God. I'm using a battery pack for 2 reasons. 1, I'm used to the system. I like the system. 1. 2, I like the system. 3, I trust Mophie. 4, I need a case. I have the iPhone 7 Plus case, which works on the 8 as well. Or the 8 Plus, I should say. It's just having extra battery. And given that I've been setting up and using it a lot, I know I need the extra battery right now. I know I do. So it's difficult for me to give it a fair shake for battery, but I've very rarely seen Apple be egregiously incorrect and overstating the battery life of an iPhone. So I would believe the spec sheet on that one. Just depends on your use. Depends on what you're doing outright. But it's not that I'm not thrilled. It's just that I know I'm using it more, and then all the aforementioned reasons. I am hoping that Mophie is going to be able to send a couple of the products that they get specifically for the 8 and potentially other Android devices, because I like the ecosystem. Mophie's done an amazing job at bringing inductive charging and battery packs and just melting them together. I don't have another battery, but like when the battery pack runs out here, you basically just clip on by magnet an external battery and then they're interchangeable. It's wonderful because Diana, she never charges her phone. So she's got one for her 6S, and so when it runs out of battery, she just slaps one on, so you don't have to dangle cords and cables everywhere. It is, in my estimation, about the best battery case solution I've ever used for all those reasons. Inductive charging is just a bonus. It's wonderful, especially with our we have in the state of Washington a law on the books that's EDUI, or like an electronic distracted while driving. Basically, it's driving while under the influence of electronics. And so you cannot touch your device at all. They say it's okay for you to clip it onto the dashboard. So there's a magnetic clip that goes into the vent, and it just clicks on, and I drive. And so I've got the phone right there if I need to map something. And I use the phone's software for mapping more so than the built-in nav system, which is absolutely horrific. Jeff Runner asks, and this is a super chat. Again, I would be going to the regular chat, and I might be dipping in here and there, but the super chat does get priority. Jeff Runner asks, Chris, may I ask what sources you read? Sure, I'd be happy to tell you that. And thank you again for asking it. I love reading. I cannot get enough of reading. I watch Twitter. That's my source. Facebook to a certain degree, although I find Twitter to be more my style, more suitable for me. And unfortunately, Twitter's now a mix of politics and technology and Star Wars and Lego and nostalgia and 80s and retro games. I mean, it's funny. It's me. Your Twitter feed is you. It's why, I'm always tweeting all these various things. So I read, I guess, on a regular basis. I like the 9 to 5 sites, 9 to 5 Mac, 9 to 5 Google, Generally speaking, they've been pretty decent with their information. I've mentioned in the past Daring Fireball, although I don't read him as regularly as I should. The Verge sometimes has some good stuff, and I like the fact that they cover quite a bit. The Outline, every so often they'll have an in-depth feature. Back Channels, a good one. Usually any blog on Medium. So, and not to say that Medium is a network itself, but you can actually host your blog there. Medium posts are generally very well written, very well thought out. Generally, that's not always the case. But it's Twitter that, bubbles these up. And I see the link and I check it out. I'm like, that looks like something that I would like to read. That's something I would like to learn more about. Ars Technica is absolutely one that, I'm interested in seeing what's going on in tech. Honestly, I'm mentioning them not at the end with intention, but I would pop to Ars Technica first before I went just about anywhere else for a lot of that tech stuff. Because generally speaking, they've done well for, God, how long have they been around? A couple of decades now? It's crazy. But Ars Technica is definitely a source. It's difficult to narrow them down because I very rarely will I avoid. I think it's easier for me to say which sites I avoid. Forbes is one site that I avoid. I'm going to lay it out for you. I mean, forget about the ad blocking issue and they don't let you in without logging in. They just have crap writers. You wonder, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. Forbes is beyond worthless as far as a lot of journalism is concerned in the blog post, by and large. There are exceptions to the rule, but I'm saying I've been burned one too many times. Way too many times with Forbes. Forbes is one. I don't care what the headline is. I won't look. I don't care what it is. I won't look. So there you go. There's the one resource I won't read. And I can't be the only one who feels that way, dude. If you read half the stuff, it's like, dude, what? It's like, you have a heartbeat? Here's a blog. You want to talk about destroying a brand. I thought I did a pretty good job destroying my brand. No, that Forbes takes the cake. Another super chat here from Mr. Rip Tear. Do you think Tim Cook will realize he needs to clean house in the quality control department before it's too late? So that's a fantastic question that I'm hoping, honestly, to answer in depth in a video in this coming week. I know it's going to be a very busy week in and around the Pixel, the launch, and the Google announcements, but I really do, and maybe it'll be over the weekend as a standalone video for Chris Pirillo to talk about how do I feel about Tim Cook, or is Tim Cook, is it time to go? I'd like to dive a little deeper in that because I don't think I'm going to do it justice, and I've only lightly talked about this in live videos over the past few days. And I think it was in yesterday's TLDR, as a matter of fact, that I talked at length about this. I would like him to recognize that he needs to clean house. I don't think he will. And here's why. He does not have an attention to detail that we might need him to have if we perceive issues. He has an attention to detail as far as streamlining manufacturing processes and getting hardware from point A to point B and setting up the entire ecosystem. But, he'll have no reason to change if the market doesn't force him to change. Now, me not buying an iPhone 10 or you not buying an iPhone 10 is not going to make much of a dent. And it's not that even me buying an iPhone 8 necessarily made that much of a dent either. I think it's going to be facing certain market realities that basically hurt him. And I think what's going to happen is someone outside of Apple, an entity outside of Apple, is basically going to hand Apple its hat. And I think Google has been poised to do that, but Google keeps failing with their own efforts time and time again. If anything, I wish Google would hire better people to do what they need to do, but they don't. And I doubt they will. Google's seen failed project after failed project after failed effort in this space. And that's not that I hate Google. It's not that I hate Apple. If I had a chance to work for either one of them, yeah, absolutely, I'd jump at the chance because it would make me feel like I'd be able to make a difference. And that's what I enjoy doing. That I just enjoy making a difference. I enjoy when I'm able to lay out advice and I'm able to provide you a little more perspective when I'm sharing an experience with something or sharing my thoughts and opinions. I just appreciate sharing that because that's always what made me stand in awe with the internet. It was just being able to influence other people. I love that. And you have a chance to influence me as well. So I think he needs to clean house in the quality control department before it's too late. Yes. I don't think he will. It's not going to be motivated internally. It's going to be motivated extrinsically or externally. the chance for momentum to change, so long as market forces stay the same or roughly the same, are very low. That's the only thing. And even then, I don't know if he's still going to feel the pinch. If financially, possibly, but is he going to recognize that it's because the software has been a catastrophic failure, time and time again, even on newer devices? Is he going to recognize that needs to be fixed, or what needs to be fixed, or is he going to trust his current team? I don't know. I think the wrong people are. He does. I want to talk about this at length. I will in a video potentially over the weekend. But that's how I feel, for the most part. I'll flesh out a few more ideas, and we can have that conversation in a dedicated video. Yasser, Super Chat says, thanks for keeping it real. Thank you. I do appreciate it. And I am checking the other comments, too, for anybody who's saying, it's not checking the other comments. Yeah, I am. And I'm seeing great... Actually, people are, listening. It's great to see. But, I definitely want to, keep things going. David Stevens, in terms of making sure I address everybody that I can. David Stevens asks a question that's slightly off topic, but we've kind of been veering this way. Have you used 4K at 60 frames per second? I know you can AirPlay directly to the new 4K Apple TV. Also, iOS 11 default wallpapers are pretty terrible, just saying. Yeah, they kind of phoned in the wallpapers, I felt. Not that I ever bought into the wallpaper idea. I'm happy with my current wallpaper. Don't change it all that often. I've used it. I can't say it's that compelling. The 4K 60 frames, the 60 hertz, 60 frames per second. 60 hertz, right? Yeah, I am 4K 60 hertz. I had to bypass my receiver because it doesn't support 4K. I had to go directly into the TV, the LG TV that I had to update the firmware for in order to get HDR. I can't see the difference. Maybe if they were side by side, I could see the difference, but it looks okay. I guess if you have the TV, you might as well get the best experience you can for it, so it's nice to have. You could probably have a similar type of experience, minus the software differences, with another hardware manufacturer. Amazon just released something this week that I think is potentially compelling. Although there is going to be the Amazon app on the Apple TV soon. So, it's kind of, it's not exactly give or take. It's a balance. But it's over the past week, I haven't felt a huge impact by it, nor have I felt a huge impact by changing from the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 8 to dovetail into that. Victor Lin comes in, also from Norway, potentially, with a super chat. Apple needs to step up in OS game. I just bought the first iPhone because of iOS. Now I felt like Alice in Wonderland in iOS. Want Jonathan Ive back in iOS job. Well... So you may be thinking Scott Forstall as iOS, because Jonathan Ive, Johnny Ive, aluminium, he's the one responsible for iOS in its current state. He's an industrial designer, and I have no doubt the guy's got an eye that just is unparalleled, virtually unparalleled, in terms of what the hardware looks like. The problem is, Johnny doesn't belong anywhere near software, and I think we've seen that play out since iOS 7. He needs to be gone. From software. Not to say that he isn't gone, because I think he's phoned it in. He's not even around day to day, to my knowledge. He's checked out. So I think his influence should be minimized, specifically with design of software. And I do believe that Scott Forstall would make quite a triumphant return. You want to talk about cleaning house, that would be it. But I don't think that's going to happen. A lot of things would have to happen for that to happen. But for me, I think we would have a better iPhone experience if Scott Forstall was still at Apple. Or back at Apple. Very little doubt in my mind. If Scott was leading this. Very little doubt in my mind. Very little. Which angers me even more because I know it's not going to happen. Or I just can't imagine it. I can't imagine it happening. Yeah, Victor, it's a very good point. Tony Yoon chimes in again with question number 498, Super Chat. I told you, I really have answered close to 500 questions. Now that you have the 8 Plus, will we be seeing a 4K 60 frame per second video from you? And have you tried the 24 frame per second cinematic mode on the iPhone, or is that iPhone 10 only? Oh, let me see. Well, what would I do? What should I do my video on, Tony? If you got any suggestions for what I could try it on, because I'll do it. I'll do it 40K, but I don't know if I'd be the one doing it, or if I'd be recording Jedi. I think it'd be a lot more fun to do something more real world rather than me talking about it. Maybe I'll try it. Maybe I'll think of a topic and then talk about it. Maybe I'll try the Tim Cook video with that. The problem is that I like using the front facing camera so I can make sure I'm in frame. Let me check the camera setting here if I can find the damn thing. God, the organization of it. formats. You have to use most compatible. Oh, I have to use most compatible right now because Final Cut Pro hasn't released a codec. They've released a codec update for iMovie, but not Final Cut Pro for the free product, but not the $300 product. Okay. Let's see here. Record video. 4K at 60 frames per second. So, yeah, I can do it. Let's see here. And it'll apparently, a minute of video at that with the new codec is 400 megabytes. So it won't, the Tim Cook, whatever video I do won't be a long video. Yeah, let me think about that. Yeah, let me think about that. Because I'd like to try it. I just got to think of a good topic. If I can think of a good topic or a video to like showcase it, that's what I do. I don't think it would do very well indoors in this kind of lighting environment, but I would certainly, I'd certainly give it a shot. I'm thinking more like taking Jedi out to a park and recording her there as kind of like the demo. You know, just I prefer more the real world, less the staged stuff, just to give people a better feel for how that works. And it'd be really boring to see me 60 frames per second doing this. There's no difference in 30 frames per second versus 60 with a talking head necessarily. So let me think about that. If you have ideas, let me know. Maybe we can play some Star Wars figures. Can we do that? Will that be okay? Victor Lynn comes in again with a super chat. Who is your best candidate for OS department? I would say for specifically for iOS, it would be Scott Forstall if he'd be willing to do it. For Android, I mentioned this last week. If you follow a gentleman by the name of Tony Murray, T_Murray, Murray, he works at Google with Android, specifically on the Pixel team, but a lot of his developments for Pixel actually trickle down into Android, I think AOSP. If I'm not mistaken, I may be. But he has his eye on quality control and fit and finish and polish. And so I know inevitably if I have an issue with my Pixel, I'm going to find a way to get it. I really want to find a way to get the first Pixel and the second Pixel. I really do. That may be less of a challenge now soon, but we'll see. But Apple needs, and I said this last year, Apple needs someone like Tony in their house. And someone who's got the attention to detail and performance. And so I don't know who that person is. I don't know if that person's necessarily moved on. But even someone who groks the iOS ethos. So is it Matthias Duarte? Pardon, I've never said his name aloud. It's have you ever read a name over and over and over again, and you read it a certain way in your head, and then when you actually say it out loud, it's why when people have known me for years, but have only read my name, would call me Pirillo. Like, that's not quite it. I say the name at the beginning of every video, but it doesn't offend me. He's got the ethos down. He had the ethos down for the Palm Pre. Was it the Pre? God, it's so long. It's been so long, that device, so long ago. Yeah, it's interesting though how having someone in that kind of position could actually change its destiny. We're moving on into about an hour or so, and so I want to wind down. Hopefully, I covered everything that you wanted me to cover in terms of my week experience with the iPhone 8. Very happy to continue. iPhone 8 Plus. That was the crux of this video, the hope for this video. But certainly, paying attention to you is also a big value. Largely the reason why I did this live. And so, going to start winding down. Cool Amazon 123 says Scott Forstall was the heart and soul of iOS. Well, this is my feeling, and I mentioned this in TLDR the other day, I think it was yesterday. To me, Scott Forstall was basically the shadow, or not just in the shadow of Steve Jobs, but the shadow of Steve Jobs. Like, Scott was still in place when Steve left. He knew what he was doing. I don't care if he was abrasive. Like, the abrasive people get things done. That's the thing. Sometimes you need that amount of dissent. Sometimes you need a good argument to push through and make something that's as beautiful as a polished rock. It starts out rough, and I think Scott Forstall was the closest thing we had to Steve Jobs. And so it was disappointing to see that happen. I don't know anything about the internal politics, but it was telling. It was damning. And it's true. This is the closest thing we had to a Steve Jobs. He was not in his shadow in a bad way, but he was his shadow. He was effectively his protege. So that's that's sad. It's sad that we all seem to recognize this, but few others do, or few others want to talk about it. Albert, and this may be one of the last comments I'm able to get to today. And of course, I'm doing live videos every day on the Locker Gnome YouTube channel, the separate one. Forget Google, Apple, and Samsung. OnePlus 5 for the win. Well, isn't that Google? It's Android-y. How's the OnePlus 5 camera? I think one of the earlier OnePluses wasn't that great. I need a good camera on my phone. There's no doubt about that, because it's the one I got on me. I need a good camera. It's interesting from potentially a performance perspective in the modifications they've been making. I haven't had an experience with one, so I can't speak to it. I know a lot of people are fans of the OnePlus 5. I know a lot of people are fans of Samsung. A lot of people are fans of Apple, Google, etc. That's one of those devices that I'd like to see. So let me look into figuring out how I can do some kind of... Here's how I'd have to do it, and I'll end it with this. In terms of me reviewing devices, which everyone seems to want to see, everyone, all three of you. Thank you for the thumbs up. If you remember to like this video, thank you for that. That really does help. The like button, and then you tap the notifications to be notified of the next video that we do. As long as you do those two things, that's great. Even in talking about the iPhone 8 Plus, I don't even know if I can give it a fair shake without having comparisons to its contemporaries. So I've got to figure out how to effectively make it such that here's the device I'd like to get, and then maybe even crowdfund it. But I can't set up a new Patreon campaign for that, because I'd have to set up one for each device. I don't necessarily want to set up a GoFundMe for each one. I guess I could. I don't want to do a Kickstarter for each one. I guess I could. It just seems to me it would be a bit tedious. I don't know the best way to do it. I would rather just create one profile and say, here are the devices that I'm looking into, and then you can say, yeah, I'd like you to review that device, and 50 cents, $1, or whatever it happens to be. That I think would be a better way of doing it. And maybe there's an option out there to better do it. Maybe someone knows of something. I think there was a Seattle company that kind of did that at one time. I'll look into it again. I can't remember. Gift Finder, I think is what it was. But I'll look into it. I'm looking for the best way to accomplish those goals. In making it easy, to do on a regular basis, and knowing full well that you are a part of that process. I'm happy to give you my experiences, happy to give you my opinions. This is what I've been doing my entire life. All 40 some odd years of it. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I do appreciate it. As I said, as I say at every video, I started doing this a couple years ago. I love you. You may not hear that every day, but I do. I do love you, and I do appreciate you. This is only working because it's a circle of reciprocity. It's a circle of life here. I'm not going to hold you up or anything, like Simba, the Lion King. I don't think I needed to explain that reference too much further than I did. So thank you. Again, I intend on continuing to do videos every day in this channel and in the other channel. Thank you for subscribing to both. Thank you for following across social. Thank you for, if you want, go over to the Twitch profile. The link is in the video description, twitch.tv/Chris Pirillo. You can become a sub there and join the Discord chat from there. That's a 24/7 chat. So if this is not enough for you, you can do it that way. You can be an active sub. That's the way to get access to that chat. And then even with that, it could be free. The sub on Twitch could be free if you have Amazon Prime. Apparently, you can get free sub. You can sub to someone for free if you have an Amazon Prime account linked. And there may only be so many that you can do every month, but I'm just saying it's an option. So thank you. Screenplay House LLC in the chat, not a super chat. I am paying attention. Says, you rule, Chris. Apple ignored me, but maybe not you. I think they did. And David Stevens says, here's a beer, buddy. Oh, man, I need one, and I don't have any. Sad panda. I love you. I appreciate you, and may the Force be with you.